right was when we had to kneel and wash our brother's feet. I love the old-time way. There's nothing like it. 12 years after we lost little Johnny, on a Saturday morning, little George, our baby brother, got up and he came in and he asked Mom and Dad if he could go to our neighbor's house to go fishing. He went down there to a friend, and sometime in between that time of fishing, he decided to go in swimming. There were girls there, the people that owned the pond, their children were there in that pond. They had inner tubes, they had this little boat, they had all the things that could have saved his life. But that June the 5th, 1982, he met the Lord. I can remember when the call came, brother, it was hard. As we stood there on the side of that bank, waiting for them to find little George. As they brought him up out of the water, I can remember thinking, what is my mom and my dad going to do? We've been through it one time, and here we're having to face it again. And I remember looking up into the sky. The clouds were, it was not a very sunny day, but it wasn't a very cloudy day either. And I can remember that the clouds were rolling. And the Lord said, this too will I help you bear. And He did. Church, this sorrow that you're feeling right now, God is going to help you bear it. See, the Lord is acquainted with grief. He's acquainted with great sorrow. The sin that we have and that we commit, the Lord carries that every day. He sent His Son to die on an old rugged cross that you and I might have life after this life. When I think about everything that we've been through as a family, my mother, 14 years ago, suffered a major stroke at the age, just turned 60 years old. My mom lives with us, and I caretake for her through the week. And you know what? It's a great joy to do that. 3 years after my mom suffered a stroke, my dad, at the age of 67, had a blockage in his head. They were treating him for vertigo, misdiagnosed it, and by the time that they found out what was wrong, he was gone. See, God was preparing me for something even harder. See, God sees down through time. He knows all of these things are going to happen. And sometimes He has to allow us to go through great sorrow, because you know what? That's a part of life. We can't all live forever. And all of the little children in this world can't be born perfect. So He looked at us one day and He said, even though I'm going to have to allow you to walk this road, I've chosen you to be a part of little Jaden's life. We go to the doctor when we find out that Jaden's going to be a little boy, and we start to leave that morning. He turned and he looked at me and he said, we're going to make you an appointment to go next door because we couldn't get a good picture of the baby's head. I didn't think anything about it, and we got in the car, and Ashley looked at us and she said, I really believe that the nurse saw something that she didn't like on that ultrasound. And I just totally dismissed it. I said, oh no, I said, they would have told us. When I got home, I took the paper that the doctor gave me out, and I tried to read the word the best I could, and I sat down at my computer and I Googled the word. And once again, I found myself back in that place of sorrow. I felt like that my life and my daughter's life So you know why that I felt that way? It's because I had my eyes on the circumstance. We go back to the doctor the next week, and we walk in, and he comes in, and he takes his little seat, and he looks up at the monitor, and he turns to us, and he says, "This is very, very serious." He said, "In the ventricles of the brain, where the brain is supposed to be, it's filled with a massive amount of fluid, and on the other side of that fluid, we do not see that there's any upper portion of his brain." Let me tell you, you get that kind of news with your 17-year-old daughter, you'll hit your knees. You'll hit your knees in a way that you never have before. He got a telephone call and had to dismiss himself from the room for a moment, and when he got up, I just ran to the bathroom. There was a bathroom about as far as from here to that door, and I ran in that bathroom and I fell down on my knees. I wasn't concerned about what germs were on the floor. All I knew is that my child was laying there on that table fixing to have to go through the battle of her life. Jaden was born with exactly what the doctor said. Now, I want to tell you something. I'm Pentecostal. And I truly believe, Brother Emmons, that God was going to change the situation. I truly believe that God could do the impossible and that he was going to prove those doctors wrong. And you know what? I felt betrayed. The night that Jaden was born, once again, I found myself on that bathroom floor, crying out to God, "Why, Lord? Why? Why my child? With everything that we've been through as a family, why do I have to climb this hill one more time?" And he came to me and he said, "You remember David? You remember what happened to David? He lost his son, and the scriptures say that the Lord came to him and told him to go wash himself." He said, "Get up." So I got up and I took a paper towel and I washed my face and I squared my shoulders back the best I could. And I walked out there and I walked to that nursery where they had little Jaden. They had told us that if he survived birth, that he would probably die within the first 2 or 3 months, a year at the most. As I walked in that nursery, they had little Jaden up in their hands, and the nurse had her little pinky in his mouth. And do you know what he was doing? He was sucking on her finger. They had told us that he would not be able to do that. And the Lord said, "I will give you these little blessings. Just don't take your eyes off of me." And when I saw him doing that, the Lord spoke and he said, "I will carry you through this. And this child, with the imperfections that it has, you're going to love in a way like you have never experienced in your life." And that's what I've done. Jaden cannot walk. He can't talk. He can't pick up a toy. He can't roll over. And he is blind. But do you know what he can do? 2 years. For 2 years, Jaden cried night and day. I mean, I'm literally talking about night and day. Chris and I began to pray, and we said, "Lord, you know what? We need for you to show up, and we need to see that this baby is happy," because at that time, he had not shown very much emotion. This particular night, we were sitting at home, and I had taken Jaden's shirt off, and I had raised him up in the air, and I began to blow with my mouth on his back like this. And you know what he did? He giggled. And he giggled again. And I just kept wanting him to giggle because I had never heard that. From that day, within a month and a half, those crying spells got less and less. And do you know what, sister? One day, he didn't cry. And I turned, I said to Chris, and I said, oh my goodness, we went through a whole day, and he's not crying. See, God knew. He replaced that crying with a laughter and with a giggle that when you walk into the room, it just lights the room up. I've learned to take my eyes off of what I see. And I've learned to see God through it all. As we walk into the hospital room there where Tracy is at, my brother-in-law, I've learned to look beyond what I see, because I know that I serve a God that can either change this situation and this circumstance, or that circumstance can change me. And that's what it's done. I want Chris and Zach to come around, and I want them to sing this song to you this morning. Let it minister to you. And in this valley that this church and this family and this church is going through, I want you to lift this family up. I want you to be positive to them. And I want you to speak life into this family, because that's what they need. This separation is not forever. It's only temporary. Listen to this song called Circumstance.